The year was 2387, and Captain Jake Morrison stared out the window of his small office aboard the Federation starship Starlight. Stars streaked past as they traveled through space, but Jake barely noticed them anymore. He had been doing this job for 3 years now, and most days felt exactly the same. Jake led a team of 4 humans who worked in what the Federation called intelligence operations. To most aliens in the galaxy, this was just a fancy name for spy work. But to Jake and his team, it meant spending most of their time filing reports that nobody read and handling cases that other species considered too boring or too simple to bother with. His team was small but skilled. Lisa Carter worked as their communications specialist. She could speak 12 different alien languages and had a gift for understanding what people really meant when they talked. Ryan Phillips handled all their technology needs. He could fix almost any machine and had a talent for getting computers to do things they were not supposed to do. Amy Brooks was their field operative, which meant she was the one who actually went out and gathered information in dangerous places. And finally, there was Jake himself, trying to hold everything together and make sure his team did not get killed or fired. The problem was that nobody in the Federation took humans seriously when it came to spy work. For over 300 years, the Zephyrians had been the galaxy's top intelligence agents. They had natural mind-reading abilities that made them perfect for the job. They could look at someone and know exactly what they were thinking. Other species had their own advantages too. The Nexari could process information faster than any computer, and the Morphans could change their shape to look like anyone they wanted. Humans, on the other hand, had no special powers at all. They could not read minds, they could not change shape, and they were not particularly smart or strong compared to other species. Most aliens saw them as newcomers who had only joined the Federation 50 years ago and still did not understand how things worked. This morning started like any other. Jake was drinking his coffee and reading through routine reports when his door chimed. Lisa entered with a worried expression on her face. "Captain, we just received an urgent message from Admiral Helen Foster," she said, holding up a small communication device. "There's been a problem with the mission on Kepler 7. Jake set down his coffee cup. Admiral Foster was the head of Federation intelligence, and she never contacted small human units unless something had gone very wrong. What kind of problem? The Zephyrian team that was sent to infiltrate the rebel organization has gone missing. They were supposed to report back 12 hours ago, but there's been complete silence." Jake stood up and walked to his desk. Kepler 7 was a mining planet on the edge of Federation space. For the past 6 months, a rebel group had been attacking Federation supply ships and causing trouble for the local government. The mission was supposed to be simple: send in some Zephyrian agents to read the minds of the rebels and find out who was leading them and what they were planning. "Get the team together," Jake said. "I have a feeling we're about to get involved in something much bigger than our usual work." 20 minutes later, Jake sat in the ship's small briefing room with his 3 team members. The room was cramped and plain, nothing like the fancy facilities that the Zephyrian intelligence corps used. But it was theirs, and they had learned to make the best of it. "Here's what we know," Jake began, activating a holographic display that showed the planet Kepler 7. 3 days ago, a team of 5 Zephyrian agents was sent to infiltrate a rebel base in the northern mining district. Their mission was to identify the leadership and gather intelligence about future attacks. Ryan leaned forward in his chair. "Let me guess, they used their standard approach. Walk in, read some minds, walk out with all the information they needed." "Exactly," Jake said. "But something went wrong. They made contact with rebel recruiters as planned, but then all communication stopped. Admiral Foster is convinced they've been captured or killed." Amy crossed her arms. "So why are they calling us? We're just the backup team for simple cases." "Because," Lisa said, reading from her communication device, "every other intelligence unit is either busy with more important missions or refuses to get involved. The Nexari say the rebels are too unpredictable for their analysis methods. The Morphans think it's beneath their skills. We're literally the only option left." Jake nodded grimly. This was typical of how the Federation treated human intelligence. Operatives. They were the last choice, the option you picked when everyone else said no. But Jake had learned something over the years. Being underestimated could sometimes be an advantage. What do we know about these rebels? Jake asked. Ryan brought up more information on the display. They call themselves the Free Miners Coalition. They're led by a species called the Corvani, who are naturally immune to telepathic intrusion. That might explain why the Zephyrians ran into trouble. Immune to telepathy? Amy asked. That means their mind-reading abilities would be useless. Worse than useless, Lisa added. If the Corvani figured out that the Zephyrians were trying to read their minds, they would know immediately that they were dealing with Federation spies. Jake studied the information on the screen. The Corvani were a tough, practical species who had been mining asteroids and planets for thousands of years. They valued hard work and direct communication. They also had a reputation for being suspicious of outsiders and quick to violence when they felt threatened. All right, Jake said. Finally, we're going to do this differently than the Zephyrians would. Ryan, I need you to research everything you can about Corvani culture and behavior. Lisa, find out what languages they speak and how they communicate. Amy, start thinking about how we can approach them without seeming like a threat. What about you? Amy asked. I'm going to figure out how to rescue 5 Zephyrian agents without getting us all killed in the process. The next 18 hours were a blur of preparation and planning. Jake's team worked harder than they had in months, studying every piece of information they could find about the rebels and the planet where they were hiding. Unlike other Federation intelligence units, humans could not rely on natural abilities or advanced technology to solve their problems. They had to use careful observation, logical thinking, and lots of hard work. Ryan discovered that the Corvani had a strong sense of honor and respected people who were honest and direct. Lisa learned that they communicated through a combination of spoken words and subtle body movements that most translation devices missed. Amy developed a plan for approaching the rebel base that involved disguising themselves as independent miners looking for work. The key insight came from Lisa, who noticed something that the Zephyrians had missed. The Corvani don't just dislike telepathy, she told the team. They consider it a form of mental assault. If they caught the Zephyrians trying to read their minds, they wouldn't just capture them. They would see it as an attack on their fundamental beliefs, so the Zephyrians might not be dead, Jake said. They might be prisoners being held for what the Corvani consider a serious crime. Which means we might be able to negotiate for their release, Amy added. If we approach this as a diplomatic problem instead of a military one. Jake smiled. This was exactly the kind of thinking that made humans different from other species. Instead of trying to overpower their enemies or outsmart them with superior technology, they looked for ways to understand them and find common ground. The plan they developed was simple but risky. They would travel to Kepler-7 disguised as a small mining crew looking for work. They would make contact with the rebels and try to earn their trust by being honest about who they were and what they wanted. Then, if everything went well, they would negotiate for the release of the Zephyrian prisoners. It was not the kind of plan that would work for most species. It required the ability to lie convincingly, to adapt quickly when things went wrong, and to read the emotions and motivations of completely alien beings. But these were exactly the skills that humans had developed over millions of years of evolution. As the starlight approached Kepler-7, Jake felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This mission would either prove that humans belonged in the intelligence business or it would get them all killed. But for the first time in years, he felt like his team had a real chance to show what they could do. 6 months had passed since the successful rescue on Kepler-7, and Jake Morrison's team had quietly become the most requested human intelligence unit in the Federation. Word had spread through the classified channels about how they had not only rescued the 5 Zephyrian agents, but had also gathered more useful information about the rebel organization than any previous mission. The key had been their approach. While the Zephyrians had tried to force their way into Corvani minds and failed, Jake's team had simply talked to them. They had listened to the rebels' complaints about unfair mining contracts and dangerous working conditions. They had shown genuine interest in Corvani culture and traditions. Most importantly, they had been honest about who they were and what they wanted. The rebels had been so impressed by this straightforward approach that they had not only released the Cephrian prisoners but had also agreed to negotiate with Federation officials about their concerns. The conflict that everyone expected would require military action had been resolved through simple human conversation. Now, Jake found himself in Admiral Helen Foster's office aboard the massive Federation headquarters station. The Admiral was a stern woman in her 60s who had been running Federation intelligence for over 20 years. She had seen every kind of spy operation imaginable, but something about the human approach had caught her attention. "Captain Morrison," she said, gesturing for him to sit down, "I've been reviewing your team's performance over the past 6 months. 15 successful missions, 0 casualties, and intelligence gathered that other units considered impossible to obtain. How do you explain this success rate?" Jake thought carefully before answering. "Admiral, I think other species have become too dependent on their natural advantages. The Zephyrians rely on telepathy, the Nexari trust their computers, and the Morphins believe they can fool anyone with their shape changing. But these abilities also limit them." "How so?" "When you can read minds, you stop learning how to read faces. When you can change shape, you forget how to earn trust. When you can process information faster than anyone else, you miss the small details that don't show up in data files." Admiral Foster leaned back in her chair. "And humans don't have these limitations because you don't have these abilities." "Exactly. We have to pay attention to everything. We have to notice how someone moves their hands when they're nervous or how their voice changes when they're lying. We have to actually listen to what people are saying and try to understand why they're saying it." The Admiral nodded slowly. "That's why I'm giving you a new assignment. There's a situation developing with the Vakari trade negotiations that has our best diplomatic team stumped. The Vakari are an insectoid species with a hive mind communication system. They've been negotiating a major trade agreement with the Federation for over a year, but lately something has changed. Our negotiators suspect corruption or hidden agendas, but they can't prove anything." Jake accepted the mission files. "What makes this different from other trade disputes?" "The Vakari hive mind makes them almost impossible to deceive under normal circumstances. They share thoughts instantly across their entire delegation. If one of them knows something, they all know it. Our telepathic agents can't break through their mental barriers, and our technological surveillance finds nothing unusual. So you want us to find out what they're hiding using purely human methods? I want you to do whatever it takes to uncover the truth. The trade agreement involves mining rights to 17 mineral-rich star systems. If there's corruption involved, it could affect the entire Federation economy." Jake returned to his team with the new assignment. They had been given a small but comfortable office section aboard the headquarters station, a significant upgrade from their cramped quarters on the Starlight. Lisa was working at her communication console, Ryan was tinkering with some new surveillance equipment, and Amy was reviewing intelligence reports from previous missions. "New assignment," Jake announced, distributing copies of the mission files. "We're going to figure out what the Vakari are really up to in these trade negotiations." Amy looked up from her reports. "The insect people with the hive mind?" "That sounds like a job for the telepaths." "The telepaths already tried and failed. The Vakari mental defenses are too strong for direct mind reading." Ryan studied the technical specifications in his file. "Their communication system is fascinating. They can share complex thoughts instantly across vast distances. Individual Vakari barely think for themselves at all. They're more like individual fingers on a giant hand." "Which means," Lisa added, "that traditional interrogation techniques won't work either. You can't pressure one Vakari to reveal secrets because they don't keep individual secrets. Everything they know is shared with the entire hive." Jake sat down at the conference table. "So how do we approach this?" What advantages do we have that other species don't? The team spent the next several hours brainstorming ideas. The challenge was unlike anything they had faced before. With the Corvani rebels, they had been dealing with individuals who could be understood through normal conversation. The Vakari were something entirely different, a collective intelligence that operated according to rules that most species found impossible to understand. The breakthrough came from Amy, who had been quietly observing footage of the Vakari negotiation sessions. "Look at this," she said, playing a recording on the main screen. "Watch the third Vakari from the left during this discussion about mineral extraction rates." The team watched as the Federation negotiator explained the proposed terms. Most of the Vakari sat perfectly still, but the one Amy had identified made a small gesture with its front limbs, almost like it was trying to scratch itself. "I don't see anything unusual," Ryan said. "Watch it again," Amy insisted, "but this time, watch all of them." On the second viewing, Jake began to see what Amy had noticed. While most of the Vakari remained motionless, several of them made small, almost imperceptible movements at specific moments during the discussion. The movements were so subtle that they would be easy to miss unless you were specifically looking for them. "They're not just sharing thoughts," Amy explained. "They're having disagreements. Internal conflicts that they don't want the Federation negotiators to see." Lisa leaned forward, excited. "That's why they're making those micro-movements. They're trying to control their physical reactions to hide their internal debates." "But why would they need to hide disagreements?" Jake asked. "The Federation knows that negotiations involve different opinions." Ryan pulled up more footage on his computer. "Maybe because the disagreements aren't about the trade terms, maybe they're about something else entirely." The team spent the next week analyzing hundreds of hours of negotiation footage. They cataloged every small movement, every slight change in posture, every moment when the Vakari collective seemed to struggle with internal tension. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. The Vakari were not just negotiating for mining rights. They were secretly evaluating the Federation's military capabilities, technological resources, and political stability. The micro-movements occurred whenever the Federation negotiators mentioned anything related to defense systems, scientific research, or internal Federation politics. "They're not just interested in trade," Jake realized. "They're gathering intelligence for some other purpose?" Amy nodded. "The question is whether they're planning to use this information for military action, or if they're just being cautious about entering into a long-term relationship with the Federation." Lisa had been working on translating some of the Vakari micro-movements into their communication system. "Based on what I can understand of their body language, I think they're afraid of something. These aren't the movements of aggressive predators. They're the movements of prey animals who are trying to determine whether the Federation can be trusted." "Afraid of what?" Ryan asked. "That's what we need to find out," Jake said. "But we can't just ask them directly. If we reveal that we've been analyzing their hidden communications, they'll shut down the negotiations entirely." The solution came from an unexpected source. During a routine security briefing, Jake learned that several other species had been asking unusual questions about Federation military strength and political stability. The Nexari had requested detailed information about Federation fleet movements. The Zephyrian intelligence corps had been investigating potential threats to Federation leadership. Even the Morphins had been gathering information about Federation colonies near the Galactic Rim. "It's not just the Vakari," Jake told his team. "Something has multiple species worried about the Federation's ability to protect itself and its allies." Amy connected the dots first. The Obsidian Collective. "We've been hearing rumors about them for months, but nobody has been able to confirm their existence." The Obsidian Collective was supposedly a shadow organization that operated outside Federation. Law intelligence reports suggested they had agents throughout the galaxy and were working to undermine Federation authority. But every investigation into their activities had turned up nothing concrete. "If the collective is real," Lisa said, "and if they're threatening multiple species, that would explain why the Vakari are being so cautious." The emergency alert came at 3 in the morning. pulling Jake Morrison from deep sleep. The red lights flashing in his quarters told him this was not a routine call. He quickly dressed and hurried to the operations center, where he found his team already assembled along with Admiral Foster and several high-ranking Federation officials. "Gentlemen, we have a serious problem," Admiral Foster announced as Jake took his place at the briefing table. 6 hours ago, we lost all contact with Research Station Alpha 7 near the galactic core. The facility was working on classified projects involving ancient alien technology. Jake accepted the mission file that Lisa handed him. Research Station Alpha 7 was one of the Federation's most secure installations, protected by multiple layers of defense systems and staffed by the galaxy's top scientists. The fact that it had gone completely dark was deeply troubling. "What kind of ancient technology were they studying?" Amy asked. "Artifacts from the ancients," Admiral Foster replied. "The civilization that disappeared over 3 million years ago. The technology they left behind is far beyond our current understanding, but initial studies suggested it could revolutionize faster than light travel." Ryan looked up from his technical scanner. "Who else knows about this research?" "Only a few dozen individuals across the entire Federation. The project was classified at the highest levels." Jake studied the station blueprints. "What happened to the other intelligence units that were sent to investigate?" Admiral Foster's expression grew grim. "3 separate teams have attempted to reach the station. All have failed. The Zephyrian unit lost telepathic contact with their agents within hours of arrival. The Nexari computational analysis team reported that their technology became completely unreliable near the station. The Morphin shapeshifters were detected and eliminated by unknown defenses before they could even approach the facility." "So we're the 4th team to try," Lisa said. "What makes anyone think we'll succeed where the others failed?" "Because," said a new voice from the doorway, "you think differently than other species." Jake turned to see Commander Veltar, the leader of the Zephyrian intelligence corps, entering the room. The tall, pale alien had never spoken directly to Jake before, and his presence here suggested the situation was even more serious than they had been told. "Commander Veltar has been coordinating the investigation," Admiral Foster explained. "He specifically requested that your team be given the opportunity to attempt this mission." Veltar approached the table, his large black eyes reflecting the room's harsh lighting. "Captain Morrison, your methods have proven effective in situations where traditional intelligence approaches have failed. My people rely heavily on our telepathic abilities, but whatever has taken control of that station appears to be immune to mental intrusion." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "What do we know about the station's current status?" Very little," Admiral Foster admitted. "Long-range sensors show that the station is still intact and powered. Life support systems appear to be functioning normally. But there are no responses to communication attempts, and automated systems that should report station status have been silent for over 30 hours. Amy leaned forward. "What about the research they were conducting? Could the ancient technology be involved in whatever happened?" "That's our primary concern," Veltar said. "The artifacts being studied were discovered in a sealed chamber on the planet Zarian 4. They included what appeared to be a sophisticated computer system of unknown design. The research team was attempting to activate and communicate with this system when contact was lost." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "You think they succeeded in turning it on?" "We think they may have awakened something that has been dormant for millions of years." The team spent the next several hours reviewing everything known about the ancient civilization and their technology. The ancients had been the most advanced species in galactic history, capable of manipulating matter and energy in ways that current science could barely comprehend. They had built massive structures throughout the galaxy and then vanished without explanation, leaving behind only ruins and scattered artifacts. "The interesting thing about ancient technology," Ryan observed, "is that it doesn't seem to work the same way for different species. Some races can interact with their devices easily, while others find them completely unresponsive." "Maybe that's intentional," Lisa suggested. Maybe the ancients designed their technology to test whoever found it. Jake had been thinking along similar lines. What if the station wasn't attacked or captured? What if whatever they activated is evaluating the people who found it? You mean like a test? Amy asked. Think about it. The ancients were advanced enough to travel between galaxies, but they disappeared completely. Maybe they left behind systems designed to determine which species deserved to inherit their knowledge. Veltar's expression was unreadable, but Jake could sense the alien's interest. That would explain why different intelligence approaches have failed. If the system is testing for specific qualities, then advanced technology or psychic abilities might not be what it's looking for. Admiral Foster activated a holographic display showing the station's location. Regardless of what we're dealing with, we need to find out what happened to the 47 researchers and staff members aboard that station. Captain Morrison, are you willing to attempt this mission? Jake looked at his team. Lisa nodded confidently. Ryan was already calculating technical requirements. Amy had the focused look she always got before dangerous operations. They had worked together long enough to communicate without words, and their answer was unanimous. We'll need a fast ship and minimal crew, Jake said. If this is some kind of test, we should approach it on our own terms rather than with overwhelming force. The courier ship Meridian has been prepared for your use, Admiral Foster said. It's fast, well-armed, and small enough to avoid detection. The journey to Research Station Alpha 7 took 18 hours. During the flight, Jake's team prepared for every scenario they could imagine. They studied ancient history, reviewed the station's research logs, and developed contingency plans for everything from hostile takeover to technological malfunction. But as they approached the station, it became clear that none of their preparations had anticipated what they actually found. The station appeared completely normal from the outside. Its lights were on, its systems were functioning, and there were no signs of damage or conflict. This is Captain Morrison calling Research Station Alpha 7, Jake said into his communication device. Please respond. The response came immediately, but it was not from the station's crew. Instead, a calm, artificial voice spoke in perfect Federation standard. Welcome, Captain Morrison. I have been expecting you. Jake exchanged glances with his team. Who is this? I am the Guardian, created by those you call the Ancients. I've been dormant for 3,247,891 years, waiting for a species worthy of inheriting our knowledge. The researchers aboard this station have awakened me, and I have been evaluating their civilization to determine if they are ready for advancement. What happened to the research team? Lisa asked. They are safe and unharmed. They are participating in a series of tests designed to measure the ethical and intellectual development of their species. However, they have not yet demonstrated the qualities I seek. Amy leaned closer to the communication console. What kind of qualities? The ability to solve complex problems through cooperation rather than domination. The wisdom to use advanced technology responsibly. The courage to face the unknown without relying solely on superior firepower or natural advantages. Jake felt a strange sense of recognition. You've been testing the other intelligence teams that came here. Indeed. The Zephyrians relied too heavily on their telepathic abilities and failed to understand that some challenges require different approaches. The Nexari trusted their computational power above all else and could not adapt when their technology proved inadequate. The Morphins attempted to deceive me with their shape-changing, not realizing that I can perceive their true nature regardless of their appearance. And now you want to test us, Ryan said. I want to test your species through you. Humans are the newest members of the Federation, yet they have achieved remarkable success in areas where older, more advanced species have failed. I am curious to understand why. Jake made a decision that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Instead of demanding the release of the research team or threatening military action, he chose to engage with the Guardian as an equal. We're willing to participate in your test, he said. But we want to understand what we're facing. What exactly are you evaluating? I am evaluating whether your species has the wisdom to handle knowledge that could transform the galaxy. The ancients developed technology that could eliminate scarcity and war and allow peaceful expansion beyond this galaxy. But such power in the wrong hands could destroy everything you hold dear. The Guardian explained that the tests were designed to measure not just intelligence or technological capability, but moral development and the ability to work together despite differences. The previous intelligence teams had failed because they had approached the challenges as individual species rather than as part of a larger galactic community. 2 years had passed since the encounter with the Guardian, and the galaxy had changed in ways that nobody could have predicted. The ancient technology that Jake Morrison's team had helped unlock had revolutionized faster than light travel and communication throughout the Federation. But more importantly, the cooperation between different species during the Guardian's test had created a new model for intelligence operations. Jake now held the title of Director of Special Operations, and his small human team had grown into a multi-species department that combined the best abilities of each race. Lisa Carter had developed new communication protocols that merged human intuition with alien technology. Ryan Phillips had created hybrid systems that combined human adaptability with alien computational power. Amy Brooks ran a training program that taught aliens to recognize human style, behavioral cues while learning alien techniques herself. The success had not gone unnoticed by everyone in the galaxy. In a secure briefing room aboard the Federation's newest intelligence vessel, the Unity, Jake reviewed reports that painted a disturbing picture of recent events across multiple star systems. 17 assassination attempts in the past 6 months, Amy reported, placing files on the conference table. All targeting human intelligence operatives or aliens trained in human methods. Lisa looked up from her communication console. The pattern is clear. Someone doesn't want our approach to intelligence work to spread. The Obsidian Collective, Ryan said grimly. They've been watching us since the Vakari negotiations. Our success threatens their entire operation. Jake studied the assassination reports. The attacks had been sophisticated and well coordinated, suggesting an organization with significant resources and inside information. More troubling was the fact that several of the attempts had succeeded. Good people were dead because they had learned to think like humans. It's worse than just assassinations, Jake said, activating a holographic display. Kevin Walsh and Maria Santos uncovered evidence that the collective has been manipulating galactic politics for decades. They have agents in high-level positions throughout the Federation government. Kevin Walsh, their demolitions expert, and Maria Santos, their linguist, had been investigating suspicious patterns in Federation policy decisions. What they had found was a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government, with key officials making decisions that seemed designed to benefit unknown outside interests. How deep does this go? Amy asked. Deep enough that we can't trust normal Federation channels, Jake replied. 3 separate attempts to report our findings through official channels resulted in immediate security leaks. Someone with high-level access is feeding information directly to the collective. The team had been forced to operate in secret, using their own resources and trusted contacts to investigate the conspiracy. What they had discovered was frightening in its scope and ambition. The Obsidian Collective was not just a criminal organization or terrorist group. They were a shadow government that had been working for decades to control galactic civilization from behind the scenes. Their goal seems to be the creation of an authoritarian system, Lisa explained, bringing up intercepted communications on her screen. They believe that democratic government is too unstable and inefficient to handle the challenges of galactic civilization. So they want to replace the Federation with their own version of order, Ryan said. Exactly. And our methods of intelligence gathering represent everything they oppose. We've shown that cooperation and understanding work better than force and control. We've proven that different species can work together as equals rather than being dominated by a single authority. Jake felt the weight of responsibility that came with understanding the true stakes of their situation. This was no longer just about proving that humans belonged in the intelligence community. It was about preserving the democratic principles that allowed different species to cooperate freely rather than being forced into submission. We need to find their main base of operations, Jake decided. If we can expose the leadership and prove the conspiracy exists, we can rally Federation forces to help us shut them down. The problem is that they know we're coming, Amy pointed out. Every move we make is being watched and countered. They've studied our methods and developed specific countermeasures designed to neutralize our advantages. Which means we need to do something they don't expect, Jake said. Something that goes beyond our normal approach. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Intelligence Corps requested a secret meeting with Jake's team. The alien commander had been one of their strongest supporters since the Guardian incident, but his request for secrecy suggested something serious was happening. They met in an abandoned mining facility on the edge of Federation space, far from any possible surveillance. Veltar arrived with 2 other Zephyrian agents and immediately activated powerful jamming devices to prevent electronic eavesdropping. Captain Morrison, Veltar said, my people have discovered something that changes everything we know about the Obsidian Collective. What kind of discovery? Jake asked. We have identified their leader. It is someone you know personally. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Who? Admiral Helen Foster. The revelation hit the team like a physical blow. Admiral Foster had been their strongest supporter, the person who had given them their most important assignments and helped them build their reputation. The idea that she was secretly working for the enemy seemed impossible. Are you certain? Lisa asked. Our telepaths have been monitoring suspicious Federation officials for months, Veltar explained. We discovered that Admiral Foster has been using her position to feed information to collective agents while appearing to support Federation interests. Amy leaned forward. But she's the one who assigned us to investigate the collective in the first place. Because she wanted to control your investigation, Veltar said. She has been directing your efforts away from key targets while using your discoveries to help the collective avoid detection. Jake thought back over the past 2 years, re-examining every conversation and assignment from this new perspective. The pieces began fitting together in a way that made terrible sense. Foster had always known exactly what they were doing and where they were going. She had been perfectly positioned to sabotage their efforts while maintaining her cover. There's more, Veltar continued. We have discovered the location of the collective's primary base. It is hidden in the Void Nebula, a region where most sensors and psychic abilities are disrupted by natural phenomena. That explains why they chose it, Ryan said. Most intelligence gathering methods would be useless there, but not human methods. Jake realized. Observation, intuition, and direct communication don't depend on technology or psychic abilities. Exactly. Which is why the collective has been so determined to eliminate human-trained operatives. You represent the one approach they cannot counter. Jake felt pieces of a larger plan forming in his mind. Admiral Foster doesn't know that we've discovered her identity. We can use that against her. What do you have in mind? Amy asked. We're going to give her exactly what she wants. We're going to provide her with intelligence about a mission to the Void Nebula. But instead of the information she expects, we're going to feed her false details that will help us infiltrate the base. The plan they developed was complex and dangerous. They would pretend to have discovered the collective base through normal investigation, then request permission to launch an assault. Foster would undoubtedly warn her collective contacts, but the warnings would be based on false information about their approach and capabilities. Meanwhile, the real mission would proceed, using completely different methods and routes. They would coordinate with loyal Federation forces to surround the nebula while a small team infiltrated the base using pure human intelligence techniques. The biggest risk, Lisa pointed out, is that Foster might simply refuse to authorize the mission. Then we'll know for certain that she's compromised, Jake said, "and we'll have to find another way to proceed." The meeting with Admiral Foster took place 3 days later in her office aboard Federation headquarters. Jake presented their intelligence about the collective base with carefully planned details designed to misdirect enemy preparations. "This is excellent work, Captain," Foster said, reviewing their fabricated mission plan. "However, I have concerns about sending your team into such a dangerous situation." "We've faced worse odds before," Jake replied, "and this might be our only chance to strike at the heart of their organization." Foster appeared to consider the proposal carefully, but Jake could see subtle signs of tension that he had learned to recognize over years of reading human behavior. She was struggling with internal conflict, trying to decide how to respond without revealing her true loyalties. "Very well," she said finally. "You have authorization to proceed. But I want regular communication updates and full tactical support from Federation forces." "Of course, Admiral." As Jake left the meeting, he knew that the most dangerous phase of their mission was about to begin. Foster would certainly warn the collective about the incoming assault, but she would be warning them about an attack that wasn't coming. The Void Nebula was unlike anything Jake Morrison had ever seen. Thick clouds of dark matter swirled around their ship, blocking sensors and making navigation nearly impossible. The nebula stretched for millions of kilometers in every direction, a perfect hiding place for anyone who wanted to remain completely hidden from the rest of the galaxy. Jake stood on the bridge of the Unity with his expanded team. Along with his original crew of Lisa Carter, Ryan Phillips, and Amy Brooks, they now included Kevin Walsh, Maria Santos, Danny Torres, and Claire Mitchell. Each member brought unique skills that would be essential for their mission to infiltrate the Obsidian Collective's secret base. "Sensors are completely useless in here," Ryan reported from his station. "The dark matter is interfering with every electronic system we have, which means we're going to have to do this the old-fashioned way," Jake said. "Visual navigation and human judgment." Lisa looked up from her communication console. "I'm picking up faint energy readings from the center of the nebula. Whatever's out there is big and heavily powered." "That has to be their base," Amy said. "The question is how we get inside without being detected." Jake studied the swirling clouds outside their window. The nebula was so dense that a ship could pass within a few kilometers of another vessel without being seen. This was both an advantage and a serious danger. They could approach the base undetected, but they could also crash into it without warning. "Danny, take us in slowly," Jake ordered. "Use manual piloting only, no automated systems." Danny Torres was their newest pilot, a young man with exceptional spatial awareness and steady nerves. He had been trained in both human intuition techniques and alien piloting methods, making him perfect for this kind of challenge. "Moving in at quarter speed," Danny reported. "Estimated time to center of nebula is 40 minutes. During the slow journey through the dark clouds, Jake's team prepared for what they knew would be their most dangerous mission. Intelligence reports suggested that the collective's base was heavily defended and staffed by agents from dozens of different species. Worse, they knew that Admiral Foster had already warned the collective about a possible Federation attack. "Remember," Jake told his team, "they're expecting a direct military assault with multiple ships and heavy weapons. They're not expecting a small infiltration team using purely human methods." Claire Mitchell, their newest analyst, had been studying collective psychology and behavior patterns. Based on intercepted communications, their leadership operates like a military hierarchy. They value order, control, and predictable responses. Our adaptability and willingness to improvise should give us an advantage. "The key is to get close enough to their leadership to gather evidence of their conspiracy," Kevin Walsh added. "Once we can prove that they've been manipulating Federation politics, we can rally loyal forces to help shut them down." As they approached the center of the nebula, the energy readings grew stronger. Through the swirling clouds, they began to see lights in the distance. The collective base was enormous, a massive space station that looked like it could house thousands of people. "That's not just a hidden base," Maria Santos observed. "That's a small city." Which explains how they've been able to coordinate operations across the entire galaxy, Lisa said. They have the resources of a major government. Jake studied the base through their ship's telescope. The station was heavily armed with weapons he didn't recognize, and there were dozens of ships docked at various ports. But he also noticed something interesting about the design. Look at the architecture, he told his team. It's built for intimidation and control. Everything is designed to make people feel small and powerless. That tells us something about their leadership psychology, Amy said. They need to feel superior to others. They can't handle being challenged or questioned, which means they probably haven't prepared for the kind of unconventional approach we specialize in. Jake concluded the infiltration plan they had developed was complex but flexible. Danny would pilot a small shuttle to one of the stations. Maintenance docks while the rest of the team prepared to board using disguises and forged identification. Once inside, they would split into groups to gather intelligence and locate the collective's leadership. Remember, Jake said as they transferred to the shuttle, we're not here to fight. We're here to observe, gather evidence, and get out alive. If we can expose their conspiracy to the galaxy, Federation forces can handle the rest. The approach to the station was tense but successful. Danny's piloting skills allowed them to dock at a maintenance port without triggering any alarms. The team, disguised as maintenance workers and supply contractors, entered the station through service corridors. Inside, the collective base was exactly what Jake had expected. The corridors were sterile and imposing, designed to make people feel like they were being constantly watched. Armed guards patrolled every area, and surveillance cameras tracked all movement. It was a place built by people who trusted no one and expected everyone to obey without question, but it was also a place that had never faced infiltrators who could read micro-expressions, detect lies through body language, and adapt their behavior to blend in with any group. Jake's team moved through the station like ghosts, observing everything while attracting no attention. The command center is on level 17, Amy reported through their concealed communication devices. I counted at least 12 high-ranking officials heading that direction. I'm picking up conversations about an emergency meeting, Lisa added. They're definitely worried about something. Jake smiled grimly. Admiral Foster's warning about their fake attack had worked perfectly. The collective leadership was focused on preparing for a military assault that would never come, leaving them vulnerable to the real infiltration happening right under their noses. The team regrouped near the command center, where they found an observation post that allowed them to see and hear the emergency meeting. What they witnessed confirmed their worst fears about the collective's plans and ambitions. The meeting was led by a human man in his 50s who spoke with the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. Jake recognized him from intelligence files as Marcus Reed, a former Federation officer who had disappeared 20 years earlier. Reed had apparently been building the collective ever since, recruiting agents from species across the galaxy who shared his belief that democratic government was too weak to handle galactic challenges. The Federation's Human Intelligence Unit has become a serious threat to our operations, Reed told the assembled officials. Their methods are unpredictable and effective. They've already exposed several of our key agents and disrupted multiple operations. What do you propose we do about them? Asked a Zephyrian agent. Total elimination, Reed replied coldly. We cannot allow their approach to intelligence gathering to spread. If other species learn to think like humans, our entire power structure will collapse. Jake felt anger building as he listened to Reed's plans. The collective leader was describing humanity's approach to problem-solving as a disease that needed to be eliminated. He spoke of human values like cooperation and adaptability as weaknesses that threatened galactic stability. We have spent decades building a network of agents in key positions throughout Federation government, Reed continued. Within 6 months, we will have enough influence to dissolve the Federation Council and establish direct control over all member species, and if the humans resist, asked a Morphin official, then we eliminate them completely, along with any aliens who have been contaminated by their methods. Jake had heard enough. Using hand signals, he directed his team to begin recording everything they could while preparing to escape with the evidence. But as they prepared to leave, they discovered that their presence had not gone unnoticed. "Attention, infiltrators," Reed's voice echoed through the station's communication system. "You are surrounded. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Jake realized that their disguises had been discovered, probably through security systems more sophisticated than they had anticipated. The team found themselves trapped in the heart of the enemy base with nowhere to run. So much for the subtle. "Approach," Tevin said, checking his weapons. "We still have one advantage," Jake said, thinking quickly. "They expect us to panic and make predictable choices, but we can do something they'll never see coming." Instead of trying to fight their way out or hide until rescue arrived, Jake made a decision that surprised even his own team. He walked directly to the command center and knocked on the door. "Marcus Reed," he called out. "My name is Jake Morrison. I think it's time we talked." The door opened to reveal Reed himself, flanked by heavily armed guards. The collective leader looked exactly like what he was, a man who had spent decades believing that he knew better than everyone else how the galaxy should be run. "Captain Morrison," Reed said with cold amusement. "I was expecting someone more impressive." "And I was expecting someone less predictable," Jake replied. "You've built all of this because you can't handle the idea that different species might actually work together as equals." "I've built this because democracy is chaos," Reed snapped. "The galaxy needs order, structure, and leadership from those qualified to provide it." "You mean leadership from people like you?" "Exactly.